So also, like when you look at Canada and Europe and we're on the same kind of crazy train. They're just a few train cars up, and so that's why you got to pay attention to where they are, because we're going to be there.
I would be open to an argument in favor of invading and occupying Canada on human rights grounds. I'm not joking even a tiny bit.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We're going to bring Tucker Carlson in this one. They say he's one of the most popular journalists in the world. I listen to Tucker Carlson's podcast from time to time, pretty often, really. Anyways, he has Matt Walsh on here. He's a comedian, film producer, YouTube personality. He's great, very insightful. Let's check this out. They're discussing Canada and our issues up here. This one gets wild and wacky, guys. Check this out.
No, they are.
Well, Canada's not even a country.
Right, it's not even a country, and they are overwhelmed with guilt. They are so.
Well, they're murdering. The government is murdering tens of thousands of its citizens every year. They're almost all white, and now they're going to be doing it to kids. And by the way, under the MAID's program, they're harvesting the organs. They're harvesting the organs from the Canadians they kill. So this is like the darkest thing. That's like, I would feel much freer and safer living in China than Canada. I can't believe I'm saying that. I actually love Canada. But that's happening, and no one's saying a word about it.
Yeah, that in particular is one of those things that it's so dark and so depraved that when you talk about it, I think a lot of people, especially in America, they think you're making it up or you're exaggerating.
I almost don't talk about it very often because I don't think anyone believes it, but I live right near Canada, and I know, and I'm like the only American who really sincerely loves Canada because it's just so beautiful. Not the only, but not many people care about Canada. I do. So I know a lot of Canadians, and that's absolutely, you'll look it up on the inner tubes. It's there.
It's becoming one of the leading causes of death.
It is one of the leading causes of death.
Is assisted suicide. I mean, just
the government killing you, and not because you have ALS, but because you can't pay your rent, and then extending it to children, and then harvesting the organs and the blood. I mean, I feel like they're a way bigger threat to the United States than Venezuela. I would be open to an argument in favor of invading and occupying Canada on human rights grounds. I'm not joking even a tiny bit. I think it's one of the darkest countries in the world. And it's such a great country with such great people. I don't know how we can allow this to happen without at least saying something about it. I'm not actually arguing for military action, but like maybe threatening it. They're way worse than Maduro. Way worse than Maduro. Yeah. Way worse. So like, but I'm sure I'll be scolded for, how can you say that? Because it's true.
Yeah, well, the MAID program alone is one of the most evil things happening in the world, period.
Murdering your citizens and harvesting their organs on a greater scale than China does? Really? And it's right there?
I think one of the things that's happening, why are people ignoring this in America? Well, one thing, it's people, it's like not your country, so you think it doesn't affect you. I think it does affect us, because also like when you look at Canada and Europe and these guys, we're on the same kind of crazy train. They're just a few train cars up, and so that's why you got to pay attention to where they are, because we're going to be there. So that's one thing.
Yes, thank you.
But I think that also for some conservatives in this country, there's some embarrassment about this, because I think there are plenty of conservatives who've been at least indifferent to the issue of euthanasia, and have even I've had many arguments with so-called conservatives
actually
over the years. Not as much now, because you see what's happening with MAID, but over the years with saying that, well, you know, because they get hung up on this, well, it's a personal choice. And they just think as conservatives, you cannot oppose a personal choice. You can't do it. And it's kind of the libertarian instinct gone way haywire in my mind. And so but now you can see, now, those of us who have always been against euthanasia.
So a desperate person has free will? Is that what they're saying?
And that's the problem.
These are children. They don't know what they're talking about.
And also, those of us who are opposed to it, we have been saying for years, like, this is where it's going to go. Okay, yeah, right now, and the other argument for euthanasia was, well, these are people who are in terrible pain, and they're at death's door. They've only got days or at most weeks to live anyway. They're in horrible pain. You have no idea what it's like. And so they should be able to have a way out. And like from an emotional level, like I get what you're saying. I totally disagree with it. I get what you're saying. Our argument was a few arguments, but the big one was, okay, that's what we're doing. It's already evil to do that even with someone who's terminally ill. They're doing that now, though. It will not stop there because it never stops there. And once you give the state and the medical establishment the authority to kill, they will not stop. It always starts with the most justifiable version of it that they can muster, which is still totally unjustifiable in my view. But they always starts with the most justifiable version, and then next it's like, okay, yeah, but we should include people who maybe they're not terminally ill, but they're chronically ill and they're in a lot of pain. And okay, now we've included them. Well, what about mental illnesses? Well, what about this person over there? He's homeless. Yeah, he's not terminally ill, but his life has no meaning and he's terrible. He lives on the street. And then step. And eventually you're killing kids too.
But we've seen this. We've seen this. And by the way, I'm older than you. And so they were still teaching this in schools when I was a kid. But the Nazi experiment began with euthanasia, famously. And it wasn't just on a small scale. It was like hundreds of thousands of people killed. And it began with Down syndrome. Like, how could your life be worth living? And then it wound up with Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the Warsaw Ghetto. Like, this was a very clear, much written about continuum that began with murdering the weakest. And then, again, it ended where it famously ended, which was with mass murder. But Hitler was famous for his euthanasia program. He was also famous for rounding people up and moving them to new places, is now openly being discussed in Gaza. It's like the whole thing is so bonkers, and it just tells you that human evil is not specific to any group or time or place. It resides in every person. Every person is capable of this kind of behavior, justifying this kind of behavior, and we should all be on guard against it. But Hitler was very famous for euthanasia. Did you even learn that in school?
No, certainly not.
So funny. Things change. I was in first grade in 1975. And that was a feature of it. He was bad because he killed people on the basis of their DNA. That's not allowed. And he killed the weakest, not allowed. And I guess they stopped teaching that.
And the other thing is when you give the medical establishment, when you accept the idea that death is a treatment, you have opened the darkest door imaginable.
Yes.
And this is what's so frustrating is that what are often decried as slippery slope arguments, people talk about, it's a fallacy, slippery slope. First of all, slippery slope is not a fallacy. It's not a fallacious way of making an argument. No. All we're trying to show you is that, okay, here's a door you've opened. Okay, you've made an argument to justify something, and what I'm trying to tell you is that I can take that argument intact and use it to justify this thing over here that we both agree is horrific. And so if I can do that, what that tells me is that, what it should tell you is that either your argument is bad or the thing you're arguing for is bad, or both. And that's what the slippery slope thing is. And that was the point with euthanasia. Once you allow the medical establishment to use death, murder, as a form of medical treatment, you've completely flipped it on its head, because the whole point of medicine is to heal and treat. And so to avoid death and pain. That's the point of it. And now you've flipped it upside down, and you've said that death is the treatment. And so now you've just destroyed the whole thing. You've destroyed it. But
this happened, I think that almost all obstetricians are required to commit abortion during their training.
Yeah, well, that's right.
So then you wind up with an entire medical corps that's evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are a lot of evil doctors, not just a few, but a lot.
Evil I guess it's the same thing, but they have to be very indifferent to human life, which is evil.
But did you realize? I certainly didn't realize. It really was the COVID vax and the lack of COVID the intentional lack of COVID, letting people die rather than treating their symptoms, which happened extensively across the United States. That's when I was like, these people aren't just wrong. They're the worst people, and the physicians are the worst people in the country. And for all the nurses, sweet nurses, I love nurses, sorry, who stood up and this is wrong. Almost no doctors did. A few, Mary Talley Bowden and people like that, but not a lot. And I was just our doctors are evil, not just mistaken, they're bad. Do you feel that?
I think a lot of them are. I mean, certainly, obviously not all of them, but
not all of them, right?
Yeah, but
like not 5%,
right? Exactly.
We're like 70%.
Well, and how about also there's abortion, euthanasia, COVID. You've gone to, but then also something that I don't think we should just drop and move on from, because speaking of justice, there has not been justice for this, which is that for years we had the entire medical establishment unanimously almost telling us that the best thing to do with a young boy who's a little bit confused about his identity is to castrate him. And they were doing that. They were doing that to thousands of kids. They were chopping the breasts off. They're still doing it in some places. But it was certainly happening at scale for a long time. They were chopping the breasts off of 15-year-old girls. And to your point, it was not just like a few doctors. There's a lot of doctors that were involved in it. A lot more doctors supported it. And a lot of other doctors who maybe didn't like it, but they didn't say a word. They did not speak up against it. This is some of the most insane, barbaric, Frankenstein bullshit that the world has ever seen. Completely unjustifiable. No one can argue in defense of it. It's one of the craziest things that's ever happened in the history of the planet.
It's hard to hear this even because you're right.
Right, and it just went on, and the way that the advocates for this, the way that they argued in favor of it, because obviously they couldn't make any substantive argument for castrating kids, what they would always say is, well, look at all these medical establishments. Every single one of them is in favor of it. And they were right. They all were. All of them.
What's so crazy is that, female genital mutilation, which is, universal in a few countries, I think Somalia is one of them, but was very frowned upon by feminists and also by me as a lover of women. And it was a feature of debate on cable news shows, like most of my life as a cable news debater. FGM, we do a segment on FGM or whatever. Can you believe they're doing this? And nobody would defend it. We'd look far and wide. Who will defend female genital, a clitorectomy? Who would defend that? And, our bookers tried really hard, but there weren't many. All of a sudden, no one mentioned it again. And that's because they started doing it.
Hmm.
And it's just a reminder that you don't have to be Somali or a Nazi or any specific group to participate in evil. This is a human problem. And the second they stop talking about what other people did is bad, it's probably a tip that they're going to start doing it themselves, right?
And it's also a lesson that it's very easy. I mean, look, nobody wants to admit it now, but at the height of the trans madness, and I don't mean to talk about it totally in the past tense like it's over. It's not. But we are past the height of it.
It feels that.
Thank God. But at the height of it, no one wants to admit it now, but almost everyone on the left supported it, vocally so. And most people on the right told themselves or insisted that it's not worth saying anything about. It's not that big of a deal.
That's totally right. That's exactly
right.
true.
This is a cultural war sideshow. And so what that tells us is that it's actually very easy for people to convince themselves to go along with the worst evils that are even conceivable.
No, that's totally right.
It's very easy to convince yourself.
And partisanship is not a good guide to that. As you just said yourself, there are a lot of people that are on our side, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, it's well, because what you have are, usually, this is not how it always works out, but you've got the really evil thing being promoted, facilitated by the left, whether it's abortion or euthanasia or whatever else. And then you've got cowardice on the right, refusing to speak up against it until it's very safe to do so. And then everybody does. And that's why it's also been, on the trans issue, it's been interesting over the last year and a half to have people coming out of the woodwork, very boldly saying, men shouldn't be in women's sports. Thanks for that. We could have used that 6 years ago.
Well, because this was one of those issues was you and a few other people just changed it. It wasn't Congress. It was you made your movie. And you wouldn't stop talking about it. And there were a few others, but they were all in the commentariat. They were all in the pundit class. It was no like U.S. senator who led the charge against this. Some followed in the end, but it came from outside the system, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
So that kind of shows, among other things, that the commentariat, which is insufferable, even as I say this part of it, matters, actually. The opinions you see on all these podcasts, like they, over time, do change things, clearly.
Oh, yeah. All right, gang, wrap it up right there. Let me know in the comments what you think about Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson, all of that, American politics, Canadian politics. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Check out one of the other videos floating around here. Thanks for watching this one. We'll catch you in the next one. Ciao for now.